What is the scariest, creepiest thing that has happened to you when you were home alone? It was raining pretty hard one night and I was about to go to bed. Our dog decided to start going nuts, barking at the corner of the family room. We had just moved in, so there wasn't anything in there, but she just kept constantly barking at nothing. I tried to pull her away, but she wasn't having any of it. She started showing her teeth and snarling, which she never does. I figured there must be an animal outside, so I turned on the deck lights. Deck is off the family room, and peer outside. Nope, nothing. I wasn't about to go outside because of the rain and I didn't see anything anyway. So I dragged the dog to the bedroom, but she just won't shut up. Finally decide to get my shoes and umbrella on and walk around the house. Found one of my neighbors curled up along the side of the deck trying to protect himself from the rain. He's disabled and a little slow. He usually goes out for walks in the neighborhood. He got caught in the rain and couldn't find his house. If my dog hadn't gone nuts, he might have been out there all night and who knows what could have happened. Totally not the ending I expected. So happy you decided to go out and check on the situation. I was home alone one night in middle school. I was in my room, which is right above our kitchen, watching TV. I had already shut all of the lights off downstairs cause I was eventually going to fall asleep and didn't want to get yelled at for leaving the lights on. So I am laying in my bed. The family dog, a Chesapeake Bay Retriever, was lying next to me when I hear cabinet doors open and shut. It wasn't like they all opened at once and then shut, but more like one after another for a few seconds. I freeze and look at the dog, who at this point was an old lady, who perked up and looked at me. I peek out my window that overlooks our driveway and didn't see anything. Now I didn't think anyone was in the house because while the dog was lazy AF, she was a great guard dog and she would have responded if the door opened or whatever. So after a few seconds the dog gets up and starts moving towards the stairs and I decide to follow, fully confident that if anyone was down there she would scare them. I grab my softball bat and my cell phone and follow her downstairs. As we come downstairs I notice the lights are on in the kitchen and I dial 911 because I know I shut the lights off prior to going upstairs. When we get in the kitchen all the cabinet doors were open, which was obviously not how I left it. That's when I noticed that the door was still locked, so I thought whatever did this was still in the house. So I quickly ran upstairs to my parents' closet and called my parents and told them what's up. They came home and obviously didn't find anyone or any trace of anyone being in the house. We still do not know why the light was on and cabinet doors were open, but we had some other paranormal like occurrence happen around that time, so we chalked it up to the household ghost. Tell us more stories, please. One night when I was about 12 or 13, my parents were gone for a while and I was just staying up really late, past midnight, on my desktop computer waiting for them to come home. Like most people, I had been told a million times not to talk to strangers on the internet, but about half my friends list on MSN were people I had never met before, so I was just chatting with a bunch of them. Out of nowhere, one of my online friends had told me exactly what I had been doing the past hour or two. Heck, what I was eating, drinking, playing with, when I had gotten up last. Things I hadn't mentioned in chat. I instantly got a horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach. My desktop was set up in front of a big window, so as far as I knew, this person I had been talking to, that was supposed to live in a different country than me, had found my address and been watching me through the window. Turns out, he had somehow hacked into my webcam. I always left it plugged in even though I had been warned not to when I wasn't using it, and had been frequently watching me through it whenever he wanted. It's been 10 years and I still have all the cameras on my devices covered in thick duct tape. I ended up talking to some hackers on Ventrilo when I was 16, and stupidly accepted a file from one of them. I don't remember what he said the file was, but anyway, I tell them I'm going to shower, and when I came back, my webcam light was on. I knew right away and felt very stupid. At least mine had a light. I was home alone when I was like 9 or 10, whichever you are, in 5th grade. It was literally the second day my mother allowed me to just walk home from school, rather than stay at daycare. Phone rings. Voice on the other end asks for David. I tell them sorry, wrong number. As a weird but relevant aside, we got constant wrong numbers when I was a kid because our home phone line was one digit off from H&R Block. Tax prep service. so I had developed a sort of standard cadence to wrong number calls. It almost always went, H&R Block. Sorry, wrong number. Oh, I'm sorry. That's okay. So I'm on the line, waiting for him to say oh, I'm sorry. Instead, he starts yelling that he needs to speak to David. He knows David is there. I tell him I have two Uncle Davids, but neither are there. The guy starts cursing and ranting in what, in hindsight, was pretty clearly driven by M. So I'm already pretty spooked, having never really encountered a fully crazy person in my life. And then he starts describing my house. He starts telling me that it's white with brick pillars on the green porch, red doors, and with a white dog in the backyard. He concludes the call with I know you're lying, and I'm gonna come get your butt in the next 30 seconds. I rush to get a knife in the kitchen, call my mom, and look frantically out the front of my house. Then there is a banging kicking at the door. I screamed at a pitch I didn't realize I could, and I ran into the bathroom, only locking door, and stayed there until my mom got home. When I heard the garage door open and my mom call out for me, I started sobbing and ran out to her, knife in hand. When I got older, I found out from my mom that the Uncle David the guy was looking for was a pretty bad drug addict for years, and that's why I hardly ever saw him. He probably gave someone he owed money to a bad address number. Thanks Uncle David. My husband went out of town for his first work trip following the birth of our first child, so it was me, my infant daughter, and dog at home, and I am counting it as alone considering I was the only one awake and verbal in the house at the time. Full stop. I just put my daughter down for bed and was in the kitchen cleaning up when I suddenly heard our garage door open. Something that should not be possible with my husband, and second of two garage door openers, literally in another state. I raced to lock the door coming into the house from the garage and crouched next to it for at least 3 minutes. Phone out and dial to 911. Trying to listen for any sounds of intrusion before cracking the door open just enough to reach my arm through and close the garage again. I did not sleep super well that night, though some of that can be blamed on the nightmare that was my baby's sleep schedule at the time, and had at least 3 more mysterious garage openings overnight in the following week. It turns out that when I'd paired a spare garage door open the day prior, one of our neighbors was arriving home and just so happened to use their opener at the exact moment I pressed the link button in our garage. It took me an absurd amount of time to make the connection because they honestly don't go in and out of their house very frequently. In any case, that first instance had me acting out parts of a home intrusion scene in a horror movie. 2 years ago, I get home from my last lecture from university before the start of Christmas break. My family had gone to Scotland for the weekend. I was all alone at home for the weekend. Once I arrived at home, I showered and was getting food ready. After eating, I turned on my PS4, plugged my headset and began playing. However, an hour later, I hear loud thudding from upstairs floor. Rather than being brave and checking upstairs, I ran to close and lock the living room doors to prevent a robber from entering. I hurried to my phone and called the police, who arrived quickly and began searching. After 20 minutes of searching, they found that someone had broken into my house through my bedroom window. Luckily, no valuables had been taken. I did, however, get a 2-hour lecture from my parents on what precautions to take when home alone. Thank goodness you didn't go check it out. A few years ago, I, 24F, got home from work around 10 PM while I was living with my parents, and they happened to be away on vacation that week. After cooking myself a late dinner, I went onto the back deck adjacent to the kitchen to grab something I had left out there earlier in the day. A bizarre sound caught my attention, like a dog panting. So of course I searched to see where it was coming from. I looked up to see my neighbor, 40 SM, across the street, standing on his deck buck naked and jerking off. He had been watching me through the window and did not stop when I discovered him. I was home alone after a dinner with my girlfriend. Around 3 AM I hear a very loud bang. My dog and I get out of bed to scope it out, hoping to find the reason for the noise. We searched for 15-20 minutes and could not find anything. We go back to bed, and not 10 minutes later, bang, this time I am shaking. It sounded like it was coming from the same spot. I spent the rest of night awake, not wanting to move. Found out the next day. Girlfriend put 2 sparkling waters in the freezer to cool them down. Forgot about them. Left the house and never told me about them. They exploded. That kept me up all night. That's terrifying and hilarious. Lived in a condo. In the middle of the night, I woke up to hear someone rattling my front doorknob. No one had keys to my condo except me. Then, the door opened up and I heard someone walking in. I was 100% sure I was being robbed. Fight or flight kicked in and I flew out of bed and ran toward the front door screaming "Get out of here," which came out as complete gibberish as I had been sound asleep about 30 seconds prior and now had crazy adrenaline pumping through my veins. I was literally jumping around in my underwear screaming and waving my arms when it dawned on me that the 2 guys standing at my front door looked more scared than I have ever seen anyone. One of the guys held out some keys, his hands were visibly shaking, and said something to the effect of his friend had given him the keys to his place and said he could stay there while he was out of town. Turns out the friend lived directly above me and these guys went to the wrong floor. The floors were not numbered and neither were the condo units. By mistake, they didn't know they were at the wrong door and that the keys were the same. I was able to get into his unit with my keys and they could open up my door with their keys. Needless to say, I was standing outside the hardware store the next day waiting for them to open so I could buy a new lock for my door. Can't wait to find their scariest encounter story. The very first time I was home alone. I'm watching TV and there's a huge crash bang noise behind me in the kitchen. I didn't look or think. I bolted out the front door and sat on the steps outside, crying, until my folks returned like 10 minutes later. Turns out my mom's bread machine had been kneading the dough and vibrated itself off the counter. Really the most amazing thing is that the machine wasn't damaged. I have that same bread machine today and it makes delicious fresh bread. I love this one. This one didn't make me feel weird after reading the end of it. LOL. Lived in a 2nd floor apartment my junior year of college and to save money I opened my balcony doors and windows and kept my AC off. This particular week my 75-pound dog W, a terrifying bark, was staying with my boyfriend and I forgot to lock my door. Terrible coincidence. Anyways, I woke up in the middle of the night naked in my bed to a man standing in my bedroom. Had no clue what to do. Couldn't jump up BC naked so instinctively just said "Yo WTF." His response was "I came up to shut your doors and windows," at which point I noticed all were shut. Then he left and I locked my door. Cried. One of the first nights I was home alone with my brother. I was probably 13 or so. Parents went to a concert and left me in charge of my little brother. Just after he goes to bed there's a banging at the door. I'm terrified. I stay quiet and sneak to the window. It was a neighbor from up the road. We weren't friends. He's never been in my house before. I'm wondering why the frick he wants to come in now. I stood on the other side of the door and said, "My parents aren't home. I can't open the door, stupid." "I know. Never let strangers know there are no adults around." He yells back, "It's getting dark and I just wanted to let you know that your garage door is wide open." I felt like a schmuck, but I'm still alive. Not a schmuck. Probably best possible thing to do, aside from closing it in the first place. You never know what someone's intentions are. I was home alone with my toddler, getting ready for bed after putting her down for the night when I heard her call for me. So I went to her room and she was fast asleep. Weird, maybe she had woken up for a moment and then passed out again. Got to the end of the hall before I heard her call for me in a panic. Rushed back in and she was still asleep in the same position. Sat with her for a few minutes and then made my way to bed when I heard my husband call my name. Must have come home from work early, so I go to him but he's not there. Call him and confirm he's still at work and decide I must have here a neighbor or something. Crawl into bed and hear my husband call for me again and then continue talking as if he's having a conversation with someone. Then hear my child calling me again and rush into her room. Still asleep. This goes on for a while until I decide I must really need some sleep and go back to bed with the lights on. Too freaked out to sleep. I was staring at a picture hanging on the wall when it disappeared. Like the wall just ate it. Look at another wall hanging and the same thing happens. They would reappear when I looked away and then be eaten by the wall again when I looked directly at them. Decide I'm officially an insane person and call husband to come home. Fall asleep eventually and wake up and everything is normal except my heart rate can't decide on a pace. swinging up and down between 30s 180s. Head into the hospital and I'm having a hypertensive crisis. Turns out it was a beta blockers I'd started recently. Nobody had heard of that reaction, so they kept me for a couple days until my numbers stabilized. No hallucinations after the first night other than hearing dogs bark randomly for a couple days. Not good times. Yay, beta blockers can really mess with you. My wife was on them a long time ago, but it basically knocked her emotions, both good and bad, completely out, and she didn't feel anything. It really scared us. House sitting, babysitting for a new neighbor. She was a single mom from the East Coast, moved to Indianapolis. I was a 6th grader. All I had to do was sit in the house and do my math homework while she was on a date. Her 2-year-old baby was sleeping in his crib room. Around 9 PM I get a call and answer. It's a man who only asks, "Who are you?" I say I'm the babysitter. Then he starts asking all these questions about where the mom is and who I am personally. I get scared and hang up and call the mom and let her know. The guy calls back and then just starts saying the address I'm at. Then asks if the baby is okay. When I say yes, he says, "How can you be so sure when he's that close to a window?" To which I just go, "I am just the babysitter and in trying really hard on my math homework, and now I am scared and I am also failing math." Basically a mental breakdown happened. 5 minutes later the mom shows up and explains it's her ex-husband who found her. She hands me a wad of cash and excuses me. I DK if the guy was in the bushes or calling from Massachusetts or what. It was scary. I am just the babysitter and in trying really hard on my math homework, and now I am scared and I am also failing math. I'm so sorry to laugh at something that scared you so much, but this part had me in freaking hysterics. Not me, but my cousin. He was living in an apartment in a shady part of Madison, WA, and some jerk-off was trying doors in his building. Was laying on the couch watching a movie, facing away from the door, when his front door opened. From the light in the hall he could make out a silhouette reflected in his TV, but he wasn't expecting anyone. He told me he was scared shitless, and just said, loud and firm, without turning around, "Get the frick out of here, now." Whoever it was did exactly that. I don't know what I would have done in that same situation. This is why we lock doors, people. So was out of town on business, so I treated myself and ordered in from my favorite restaurant. Delivery guy arrived and insisted he had to come into my place to deliver the food and take payment. I had to loudly refuse it multiple times, in the hopes a neighbor would hear me, and he kept insisting. Finally got him to process my payment in the hallway, but he was muttering under his breath the whole time. Scared the heck out of me. I double locked the door when he left and sat up all night feeling uneasy. Wish I had reported him to the restaurant, but I was too shaken to think about it. Yeah, someone who has delivered food for years from multiple different restaurants, that was by no means normal or procedure. Everywhere I've worked has specifically said do not go in the house even when invited in. If it's raining or something and you do go inside, don't go past the doorway. That dude was up to some shady crap. Rented a cheap B-level duplex in a bad neighborhood for 3.5 years so that I could save up money to buy a house. First thing I did after unpacking from moving in was bolster security. I changed the deadbolt on the front door and installed a locking doorknob in place of the crusty non-locking one that was there. All the windows were old, crappy aluminum slider style windows with horrible locks, and the back door was a patio door going straight onto a deck. So I bought a hardwood 1x4 and 2x4 and cut pieces to put in the window and door tracks so that any potential intruder would have to break a window rather than simply opening one to gain entry. I'm convinced that a past tenant was a drug dealer. In the first 6 months I had 4 separate instances of tweakers knocking on the door looking for Sam. A couple of the tweakers forlornly stepped off when I told them that nobody named Sam lived there. 2 others got worked up, asked where Sam had gone and where he was living, to which I responded that I had rented the place and had no idea who Sam is. After being visited by the tweakers, I redoubled my efforts to ensure that all doors were locked at all times. I still forgot to lock the front door once in a while, and I had a very creepy experience one night after forgetting to lock it. I was in the middle of cooking dinner one dark evening and went to the washroom. After washing my hands and exiting the washroom, I came back to my kitchen to see a middle-aged Asian man dressed all in black coming up the stairs from the entrance into my kitchen. "Who the heck are you?" I asked, startling him. He said he was there to fix a toilet. I was sure I was going to die, but figured I ought to talk to the guy for a few seconds before lunging for a kitchen knife and fighting for my life. The guy explained that the landlord, Gary, had sent him to fix a toilet. I told him that Gary wasn't my landlord and my toilet was working fine. He asked what address he was at. I gave him my address, and he started profusely apologizing, saying he had the wrong address. He backed down the stairs cautiously, put his boots on, and sheepishly left the duplex. I'm still not sure if he was looking for Sam to square up some unpaid drug debts and left when he realized that Sam wasn't there, if he was looking for a woman to prey on, found me instead, and reconsidered his insidious plan, or if he really was just some poor sap who walked into a stranger's house while on a mission to fix a toilet for Gary. But I never mistakenly left the door at that place unlocked again. On first read, taking his boots off sounds like he was not looking to do any harm. Second read, I paint the all black clothes as sinister and he removed the boots to be quieter. I wasn't at home. I was working the night shift at a nursing home. I'm an RN, now disabled. It was just me and a CNA and we were the only staff in the Alzheimer's unit. She had the TV on some stupid show about hauntings in America. She looks at me and says, "You'd think nursing homes would be haunted a lot, because so many people die here." I just gave her a look and told her to shut up. This place is creepy enough at night. We go to do rounds on a resident who was in the process of passing. She was on hospice and her family was aware. I checked on her every 15 minutes because I didn't want her to be in pain and to see if she was in distress. At this time, she wasn't in distress, but it was obvious she wasn't going to last much longer. Her family lived across the country and had requested not to be called past 9 p.m. So, I stayed with her and held her hand and read to her from the Bible as she was a devout Catholic. After all of the aftercare was finished, the CNA and I had been in the room for 15 minutes. I left to call the funeral home and all of that. I'd barely dialed the phone number when the CNA came running down the hallway and said, "She's breathing again." I don't know what to do. She was obviously freaked and her face was pale. I went to the resident's room and she was definitely breathing. I checked vital signs and though everything was much lower than normal levels, they were there. I checked them several times after she'd passed and there had been no blood pressure, no pulse, no anything. She lived for another 5 years and claimed she'd met God. This is the creepiest thing that has ever happened to me. May have freaked you out, but I think it meant everything to her. I was nursing my newborn in the house we had newly built and just moved into. We didn't have a fence yet, and the back of the house was basically all huge picture windows. I am in the bedroom, topless, when I see a guy come right up to the glass door in the room and peer in. I screamed and jumped up away. He didn't try to get in or anything. I'm not even 100% sure he saw me. He was an older guy. When I told my husband about it, he said it was probably an older contractor from the area who liked to come and walk the new neighborhood to check out the construction and new houses. I know he was innocent, but it scared me to death at the time. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.